Hi,
Hi.
boss. Good evening.
Sorry. Good evening. Good
First and
evening.
foremost, boss Dan, how are you? Or how's everything?
Well, adjusting with the this situation, I'm just glad that finally today IATF allowed football training to start again. So
Good
uh,
news. But
it's
but generally, you're good. You're safe. You're healthy.
yes, I just had the whole office tested for the past 2 days,
Uh-huh.
and thankfully everyone's COVID free so
Good to
far.
know.
So crossing my fingers.
That's good to know, boss Dan. That's good to know. Okay. Well, I wanted to introduce when people watch. I wanted to say that you are the Peter Uberoth of football. What Peter Uberoth was to the modern Olympics, he totally changed the fortunes of the Olympics. And in my heart of hearts, what you've done for Philippine football cannot be measured. And I guess the whole Philippines is truly grateful for what you've done, your efforts, your sacrifices. We all know that. That is no secret what you've done. No? Now, Boss Dan, this is the 10th anniversary of the Suzuki Cup. And when you came in 2009, tama, Boss Dan?
Yes,
2009?
sometime November
Yeah,
2009.
that's
Yeah.
right. Did you I remember when I first spoke to you, you said that your goal was to push the Azkals into the close to the 100 sa rankings and then hopefully go
Yeah.
down. Obviously, you've achieved that. But everything that has happened since 2010, boss, was that part of your master plan? Did you envision all these things happening?
When we started, uh, there was really never a master plan. It was just a chance for me to help football. I was I had my small club, uh, and I was just happy playing there and joining seven-a-side tournaments and joining all these other football festivals that we could join. And we traveled to Laguna. We traveled all around Manila just to join these tournaments. And I was happy as a player, owner, and player coach. But
Mhm.
um, when the opportunity was presented to me by PFF in 2009, it was just, I mean, all this time, I've always been, and a lot of people have been saying that football is really the sports for Filipinos. It's
Yes.
really the sport for Filipinos, and our genes were made for it, and that we're like the Spanish players of Asia.
Mhm.
But to be honest, nobody really put their money where their mouth was. It was always yes, but would anybody go for it? Well, when the opportunity presented itself, when PFF asked for a lunch meeting and we discussed the possibility of me handling just the U19 at that time, I immediately said yes. I mean, there was no master plan yet. It was just, yeah, okay, let me help football in whatever way I can. U19 manager, well, manager of U19 national team, it was good for me. But yeah, it was a tragic experience for the first time.
Mhm.
Uh, I mean, I wasn't really managing. Didn't get to really choose the players. Didn't really get to choose the coaches. I mean, I didn't mind, but there was no real managing. It was more of just financing the team.
Right.
So when we finished the tournament in China, and we had a terrible beating from the rest of the teams, except we got a point against Guam. I decided, though, I mean, national team is not for me, because if I didn't have
Wow.
my hand, if I didn't have my hands on it, I felt that it was just a waste of resources.
Mhm.
So I told the PFF after that experience that No national teams for him anymore. Thank you for the experience, uh, but it's okay.
But
But
what changed
then,
was
yeah.
that? What changed that you decide that? I said the way you handled the senior national team was totally different there. So what was that
No,
insight,
when
opportunity?
in December we had another lunch meeting, and this time they offered to me the senior national team. I said, why don't you handle our national team seniors? But because of my experience with the U19, I told them, no, 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 I'm okay. Thank you very much. But and then they told me that the tournament was still in October the following year.
Uh-huh.
So there was time because last time when I was handling U19, my first question was, okay, let's choose the coaches, and they told me, we coaches are already there.
Okay.
Okay, let's have a tryouts for the players. Oh, players are already there. Okay, what do we need to do? Training sessions. Oh yeah, 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 that's good. We need to. We're doing training now in San Beda, and just training expenses. And I said, when is the tournament? Oh, we're leaving 3 weeks from now. I says, oh, hindi talaga pwede. I mean, for me, it was just okay. At least I was able to help, and okay na ako.
Mhm.
So when the offer came in December, and they told me that the tournament was still in October, sabi ko, ay, may pwede, pwede. And I really wanted, what I wanted to prove then, at that time, wala pa rin master plan. All I
Okay.
wanted to prove to PFF was that given enough preparation, we would have we can come up with a good performance. So nung sinabi nila October, it fit right into the argument that I was having inside myself. Paano kung mabigyan kami ng chance? So I accepted the job
Uh-huh.
on the condition that PFF doesn't interfere in all aspects of the team,
Okay.
from coaches, players. I have a free hand in everything, and thankfully, uh, because they had a good experience with me in U19, walang
Okay.
gastos yung PFF eh. Lahat ng gastos sa akin, and then
Uh-oh.
wala silang problema. So he said, okay, you can have the team. So medyo that was a challenge for me, and I wanted to make sure na mas maganda yung performance. So
Right, right. So
true to form, yun ang una kong ginawa. Hanap ako ng coaches, ng coach at least. So sinasabi ko, uh, my local coaches were okay,
uh-huh.
but they don't really have the experience to compete at international levels,
Uh-huh.
and we don't know the kind of I mean, what's required sa
Uh-huh.
coaching mentality para maging winning coach for international competitions.
Right.
Kaya
So
naghanap ako ng coach. That's the first thing I did.
the first one you got was Des Bullpen. Tama ba?
Yes,
Was
yes.
that?
Yes,
Uh,
Bolton.
how and where did you find this Scottish coach?
On the internet. Yes, that's the story. For
Wow.
me, sabi ko, hanap na tayo ng mga players, ng mga coaches na walang that might be available. Those with some experience in international competitions, maybe not a national team coach yet, but yung somebody na who will not be intimidated by our our foreign-based players. Oh,
And
there you
was that,
go.
no?
You're with Des. I mean, so I interviewed him, and I felt that he was a right match for that kind of team at that time.
Uh-huh.
So we got him in, and he was here for several months actually.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And it was funny because when we started, bigla niya akong tinawag. I mean, this story is first time I've told anybody. Bigla akong tinawag for a meeting. Sabi niya, Dan, because he was doing some exercises, and he felt na, well, his question really showed exactly what he felt. So ang tanong niya sa akin when he was in my office was, Dan, I need to ask you something. I said, what is it, coach? I need to ask you if uh, you have to choose between, do you want to win or do you want to see beautiful beautiful football,
Ah,
tiki-taka being played?
right, right.
I said, no, I just want to win. I said, good. He told me, good, because tiki-taka might take a long, long time for this team to achieve. So just
Uh-huh.
winning is just okay with you. I said, the results are what matters. So he built the team around that philosophy, or he prepared the team around that philosophy. And
Mhm.
sabi niya sa akin, they'll never score against us if the ball is always on their half,
Right.
hindi sa atin. So with the kind of players that we have at this time, let's just make sure that we have the ball is always on their half, not in ours. So pag mapunta yung bola sa mga backline natin, no need to do some passing. Just give it straight. So what we'll do is we prepare our players to be strong, fast, and aggressive para we can handle those kinds of things. So medyo ganon prepare ni Des yung team.
Right. In fact, a few weeks ago, Boss Dan, we had Simon McMenemy on, and he said when he came on board, nakita niya na yung work that Coach Des put in, like high pressing, and he said, I don't have enough time. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. I'll just add a few things, like be more compact on defense. But whatever Des started, we'll keep doing that.
Mm.
Um, at what point did you feel that we're on to something good right here? When did you feel that, Boss Dan?
No, I merely relied on my local coaches. Sila Coach Diding, sa Coach Brax. Oh, kasi they had more experience in national teams than
Mm,
I had. But at the same time, I felt that their experience was not enough yet para maging successful tayo internationally. So that's why I had to rely on a foreign coach like this. And
mhm,
sa umpisa pa lang, January, we had a friendly against uh, Chinese Taipei,
mm,
Taiwan. And they regularly beat us before.
yeah,
And on that game, na nakita ko, we actually had a chance to score and nag-draw tayo. And the result actually surprised Chinese Taipei. So
mm,
when the players got back, the players themselves felt na they were a stronger team. I mean, of course, now it feels like iba na yung perception because I mean, if I say na we'll have a game against Chinese Taipei and mag-draw tayo sa kanila, everybody will be disappointed. I mean, I'm not belittling
of
Chinese
course.
Taipei, pero ganun yun. But at that time, the draw against Chinese Taipei felt like a victory, and players and coaches when we got back from Taiwan felt we're into something better.
Right, right.
So posible ano, and I was very encouraged because ano pa lang eh, January pa lang eh. I
Oh,
still had months to prepare, and
right.
we were at that time hindi pa, because we were everything was starting here in football. I mean, we had tournaments already. Uh, yung prior to UFL, may mga tournaments na rin na hinahandle ng mga sinasalihan ng Makaya, yung all those teams, Union. But
Oh,
I had we had more time together as a
right.
team. Kaya yun ang inaano ko. That was the luxury we had before that we can't have now.
Mm,
Meron kaming time to I brought them to different parts of the Philippines. We went to Tacloban City to do
Yes.
a camp there.
Yeah.
We went to Davao to do a camp there, and we had that chance to do that. Ngayon hindi na pwede yung ganun-ganun lang. We have to deal with international windows,
Right.
and we have to deal with the professional aspect of players in terms of relationships with clubs. So,
That's
but at
right.
that time, yun, medyo nabuhay na ako ng loob nang mag-draw kami ng Taiwan.
Boss Dan, what I've noticed watching you from afar is how calculated and actually ang galing yung bumunot ng coach. Eh. From Des to Simon to Michael Weiss and then to Thomas Dooley. Everyone you brought in, it seemed to be the right time. And they elevated the team each time. Parang, so now, the question is, why biglang magic bunot yung Simon McMenemy eh? Parang magic bunot. And ano nangyari yun, Boss Dan? I mean, that was a sudden change right before the qualifiers.
Well, Des had some health problems adjusting to the Philippines. I mean, although matagal na siya nagtagal siya ng several months, he was having difficulty with his health and he had problems with his health. And he actually surprised me by saying na medyo he had to go back to Europe for because he needed to break already, and that
Right.
he had to resign from being from coaching the team.
Right.
So we were in our camp in Tacloban at the time, and the players were very emotional na ganun yung nangyari. But I had to do something, and Simon was a young coach na I felt could complement what Des did, and that was right when he said that he didn't have to reinvent what the team were doing. I mean, he just had to uh, enhance it a bit,
Uh-huh.
but at least the foundation had been laid down already. So kasi ano lang, about 2 months na lang yun before the qualifiers.
That's right.
Kaya ano na rin. I mean, he didn't really have much time to do that, but uh, to his credit, he was able to look at the team
Mm-hmm.
quite well and was able to use the players as to the best of their to the positions that they were supposed to be, and well, the rest is history. So
Right, right. Boss, I remember you used to say dapat yung lineup balance, homegrown and of course our field force, no? Um, can you talk about why you were pushing for homegrown, especially if the bulk of our locals came from the Philippine Air Force? Uh, and I noticed even your clubs, you had your clubs that talagang puro homegrown, those coming from the south. Can you tell us bakit ganon? May yung puso mo goes out also to the kids from the provinces.
no, makikita mo kasi pag ano eh. I mean, when I was forming the team at that time, uh, the first responders were our Air Force and Army uh, enlisted personnel. I
Yes.
mean, you could see their commitment, and when they were asked to do something, talagang mga sundalo. And what they probably lacked in skill, they made up for a lot of heart and fighting spirit. And at that time, that was what was needed. And kumbaga, gusto ko na yun ang makikita sa atin eh.
Mm.
Of course, in fact, Phil and James came in a bit later, pero uh, yun, sumunod na nag-respond. Yun sila Ali, our captain, and then Anton, sila Rob. We were able to invite them. And our local coaches were the ones who actually vetted them na pwedeng pumunta. So makikita mo lang talaga yung ano eh, yung pusong ano, everybody had it, but yung pusong Pinoy na makikita mo na lalaban talaga. I mean, magka-cramps and kahit anong mangyari, kahit ano yung pinapagawa no ni Des Ballpin, gaano kahirap. I mean, pag alam nila na mag-i-improve sila as a player, they were on it and they were going to do it. And that was, I mean, for me as a first-time manager for the national team, the senior team, that was very inspiring. And that's the reason why, even until now, I'm uh, we've been doing several programs that could actually allow us to finally have local based players na merong capacity and merong you have the same skill level as our foreign based players. Pero yung puso talaga yung naka-inspire sa akin. And that was what carried the team most of the time.
In a recent interview with Rob Gear, to illustrate what you were saying about yung pusong Pinoy, sabi ni Rob Gear, were it not for Ian Araneta's hat trick in the qualifiers, we wouldn't have made it to the Suzuki Cup group stages. Um, does Ian is Ian an example of what you were saying?
Oh
Do you,
yeah, not just Ian, Yanti, Chiefy, sila Roel Hener, sila Boogie. I mean, all of them when they were playing, you could see na syempre angat sa level yung mga kalaban pero pagbakbakan, mga sundalo talaga and it was uh, you could from the bench nararamdaman mo eh during halftime, the halftime break prior to the game, kumbaga itataya yung kumbaga pwede itaya yung buhay sa game. They would have done that and for me until now I feel pretty nostalgic about this yung panahon na yon, those
yeah,
times where when we ang sa amin lang ano eh to finally the goal that was set for me by PFF was to qualify to the final group stage ng Suzuki Cup and uh,
so you surpassed it. Nag-semis tayo, boss.
yes, yun nga. Kaya when we were in the semis, medyo relax na lahat eh. Kasi we reached our goal and we could, I mean, laban pa rin. Pero alam mo yun, na a lot of weight when we beat Vietnam and we just needed a draw against Myanmar during the qualifiers para maging semi-finalist. Parang feeling winners na talaga kami. And tayo nagkakasama tayo and yeah, those were moments na you will always remember.
That's right. Boss, when we arrived in Vietnam, kung naalala mo nung press conference nung bago magsimula yung tournament, pinag-uusapan nila kung ilang goal lang isuscore dito sa Pilipinas eh. Did you feel disrespected by that? I mean, it's your first time as team manager and sige, wala pa tayo doon, pero they were looking beyond us eh. Did you feel, Simon felt disrespected? How did you feel, boss?
Well, actually, to be honest, I was more amused than disrespected. I mean, I was more amused kasi I knew where we were coming from, and I cannot. Kumbaga, I was being conservative anyway. So ako kasi pikon talaga ako pag natatalo eh. Sa totoo lang kaya that's where I'm so competitive na ito inaano tayo. I mean we looked at that as a challenge.
Yeah.
and I think the players looked at that as a challenge, and I
Yes.
think Simon McManamy was able to use that to challenge our players as well.
Right.
And yun, actually, hindi naman kasi that was not the first time na I heard that we were Minos eh.
Yeah.
I think that was not the first time na we were underdogs.
Right.
So if the press were simply saying what I already know, kumbaga, there's no need for me to feel disrespected already. But
Right.
I'm used lang na ganun ang questions nila.
Mm.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, we were able to show them otherwise. I mean, some a lot of it relied on luck, of course. You know that when Chris scored that goal against Singapore,
Yeah. Yeah.
yung mga last mga injury time or extra time goals namin,
Uh-huh.
medyo maano ma
Grabe
what
yun.
tawag that?
Grabe yung celebration sa bench nun, boss.
Oh yes, yes, especially against Vietnam,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we were going we were playing Vietnam, uh, coming off that draw against Singapore.
Uh,
And in the draw against Singapore, parang, wow, nakadraw kami against Singapore and people were talking about us.
yeah. Yeah.
Not as, maybe not as Minos, but as lucky Minos. So coming to that game against the heavy favorite, Vietnam, uh, actually the atmosphere was relaxed.
Uh-huh.
And kumbaga, yung mindset was, whatever happens, we already drew against Singapore. Parang, even if we lose against Vietnam, we have we can bounce back against Myanmar if need be in order to qualify for the semis. So medyo relaxed yung ano namin, yung dressing room, or even in the bus going to the game.
That's right. But was there some speaking for yourself, boss? Was there some concern on your part considering after Singapore, Chiefy got injured and then si Phil was throwing up on the morning of our match against Vietnam? Naalala ko, nag-breakfast tayong lahat nun eh. Bumaba si Wally, bumulong si Wally sa tenga mo, and then tumayo ka.
Yeah.
Umakit ka nun. And, can you take us back to that, Boss Dan? What was going on during that morning?
Well, syempre, in every game, I really want to win, even if it's I mean, even if we play, if the Philippines play Spain, for example,
Mm,
I still want to win. I want to make sure that
of course.
everybody's ready to face
Right.
the battle. And of course, uh, Phil was at his peak at that time and
Mm,
felt invincible. So
uh-huh.
when somebody who feels invincible suddenly uh, has that kind of sickness na nagsusuka and he was throwing up,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
then you immediately feel vulnerable.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, it's not as if we had a lot of options
Uh-huh.
na on his position. So yun, it has you worried. And of course, I mean, as a player, I want to make sure that all our players were healthy, whether it's Phil or the or Ed Sakapano or
Yeah,
whoever. I mean, kahit nasa bench, we want them to feel healthy.
right,
But
right.
it was up against the strongest team in the group, so
Yeah,
medyo extra worried ka lang. But as I said, even then, you'd feel, you'd feel. I mean, the atmosphere wasn't as stressful as the first game against Singapore. I mean,
uh-huh.
for me, I mean, from what I felt and from what I saw.
Mm, mm. Boss, of what was it like against Vietnam? No, na packed house, Maidin National Stadium, 40,000 plus people. How surreal, how incredible was that atmosphere for you personally?
So when we went there, it was actually the crowd. When we played against Singapore, the
Yeah,
crowd was cheering for us
yeah,
because Singapore was their closest rival.
right.
Crowd was cheering for us, and then now it was you could see the
First,
crowd really cheering for Vietnam. But
uh,
what I observed during that time was Vietnam was under a lot of pressure
yes.
to win,
Mm,
and I think the pressure was on them, and the crowd actually worked against them because every time they had the ball, the crowd would start cheering and banging those drums, and the cadence was not in sync with how they were playing. So to they were forced to adjust to the cadence of the crowd kasi ah, and then nakikita ko they were getting frustrated as the minutes uh, were played. Mas nagiging mas stressful yung mga Vietnamese players. And then when we scored the first goal, actually yung sabi ko, oh, I'm not allowed to swear. But yeah, sabi ko, bakit nakascore tayo ang aga pa? Makakapawi pa sila. Then yun talagang nasa isip ko. Kaya when we scored the second goal, hindi ko na napigilan sarili ko. Tapos, ano na,
yeah,
dapat sa camera. But when we scored that first goal na medyo maaga, parang kinabahan ako, naku, makakabawi pa. Nag-usap-usap kami nila Coach Diding, uh, Coach Roroy, Coach Brooks. Maaga pa. Makakabawi pa to sila kasi syempre, the play was on their favor. But yun ang napansin ko. Every time they got the ball, the crowd determined their
your pace.
pace.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes, and we were able to frustrate that. Kaya medyo pati yung crowd was getting restless.
yeah.
And as the minutes drew by, it was more and more difficult for them to break down our defensive stance, and that's why when they opened up, we scored the second goal, and
Mhm.
yeah,
Wow.
tuwang-tuwa tayong lahat. And
Bo- Boss, at the atmosphere sa locker room noon, nagsisigaw-sigaw yung mga players, yung ice
yeah,
lumilipad,
yeah.
may, may nagda-dive sa floor, si Phil sumusuka sa isang tabi. And then you gathered everyone to pray. Can you recall that moment with clarity? Yung, tara, dasal muna tayo. Huwag muna natin kalimutan, magpasalamat tayo.
Oh, kasi we prayed always before the game,
Yeah.
and sometimes and most of the time when we are given that blessing, we forget to thank God for answering our prayers.
Yeah.
And well, my parents have always taught me not to forget to thank people na nakatulong sa iyo, especially especially God. So sabi ko, dasal naman tayo kasi
Hmm.
I mean everybody was caught up in the thrill of victory. But
Yeah.
at the same time, kailangan namin magmadali kasi galit yung mga people who were manning the stadium. Kaya
Yeah.
pinatayan tayo ng ilaw, inano
Oh.
tayo. Alis na kayo. Ganun ang nangyari. So nagmadali tayo, and from that time up to the game nung lumipat tayo ng stadium,
Sa Namdin.
yes,
Uh,
every time we met Vietnamese, they were always giving us the dirty finger.
pero
First time ko rin yun na experience that time.
pero may maganda tayong na-experience pagbalik natin sa hotel, boss, nung after natin tinalo yung Vietnam. Nag-form ng Guard of Honor yung Myanmar Singapore sa hotel. Naalala mo yan, boss?
Yes.
Anong feeling noon na prior to the start of the tournament, ini-easy-easy lang tayo, minamani-mani lang tayo, tapos pagdating, may guard of honor. Nakikitambay pa yung coach nila, si Radi Abramovich sa atin.
Oh, yes, yes. Well, uh, all of those things in 2010 were first time for me, and I never really had uh, a chance to compare with the prior experience. That's why it was it was something new and exciting, and uh, yung ibang players, they were used to not being given that accolade. Kasi I actually, except for sino ba, all the players that I had or the team had in Vietnam were veterans and have played before, but never got the success that we had during that time. And I think for me, I was actually more happy for them because finally all the efforts that they had throughout the years of yung mga yung mga in-endure nila na kantsaw, in-endure nila na siguro luha when during the defeats that didn't get us to the final group stage. Finally, we were actually in the limelight,
Yeah.
and the players who were there actually deserved it, and I was happy because I was able to experience that. I was more happy for the players kasi finally yung mga talo dati, yung mga frustrations dati was finally kumbaga exorcised with
Right.
that during that time.
Boss, you mentioned yung biglang nagbago yung, we obviously, the draw with Myanmar sent us to the semifinals. Pagdating natin sa airport, ang daming television crew. Tapos in the next few days, nag-guest kayo sa Inquirer, sa TV. Meron
Yes.
din halftime show sa PBA. If you
Yes.
remember na pinakilala yung buong team.
Yeah.
At that point, boss, how did you try to keep the team focused? Kasi ang dami ng tao eh. Ang daming focus. Ay, nawawala minsan sa focus. Like, yung last practice natin sa UMAC, punong-puno yung UMAC.
That's true. That's true.
Your recollections, boss?
No, of course, uh, it was a very historic moment for me for football. And yung sa akin kasi parang I was thinking we need to prepare for the semifinals
Yes.
against Indonesia. So yung sa akin lang, let them enjoy the moment kasi whatever happens in the semifinals, ano na, kumbaga bonus na ito lahat, yung semifinals natin. But I was actually, I mean, at that time, if I recall correctly, we went around, yun nga, yung mga,
Talk shows.
yes,
Noontime show.
we had non-football activity, a lot of non-football activities na nagkasunod-sunod. We went to the office of Smart, the PBA, as you said, and naging Inquirer. I mean, sa akin, that time, parang, sige, enjoy na natin to kasi first time eh. And alam ko naman, I mean, the boys knew what they had to do to prepare for the semifinals. And there was enough time to do it. So I couldn't, it would be too selfish for me to control something na
Of course.
Kumbaga, kailangan ng players and kailangan ng sport kasi at that time na-promote talaga yung football. So yeah, there was no need to control the players. The players were professional enough to understand that they cannot they cannot over or they cannot abuse yung non-football activities na
Right.
Actually, the players wanted to practice immediately and get ready.
Right. Boss, do you feel kung nagka-home game tayo against Indonesia, malamang pumasok tayo sa finals? Sa tingin mo lang?
Because the game was always both legs
Oh,
were really close,
close. Close.
and I felt now we actually had a good chance even in Indonesia.
Yeah.
O the ang pinakamalakas natin na I mean on how we played was the communication between our players. Talagang they were talking on the pitch and they were telling each other where to go, what to do. Kumbaga, ano pa, nasa level pa tayo ng yung team at that time was a level where verbal communication was necessary na para magpasahan. And we were doing it really well. But all that was lost when we were
In Jakarta,
in Jakarta
ang
because
ingay. 80,000.
I mean, you were, kumbaga, yung social distancing natin yun 6 feet. Even if you shouted, you could not hear each other.
Yeah.
That actually cost us that first goal. Yung goal sa first leg
Yeah.
ni
Yeah.
Wei Yonson and Neil.
Yeah.
they were they there was some sort of miscommunication between them.
Right.
Kaya na goalan tayo ng Indonesia. But had it not been for that, it should have been a draw, and we could have won. We could have gotten into the finals.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And if to answer your question, kung nandito tayo noon sa Pilipinas, I'm sure it would have been a big boost for the players. Kasi ayaw din nila mapaya, lalo na dito sa mga kababayan natin.
Tama.
And that was so sayang. When we were having a game prior to our game against Myanmar, I was already receiving calls from PFF, from the PFF president, and saying, Dan, sorry, but because nobody really expected, and that's why the Philippines didn't prepare for a semifinals home game, because nobody expected that we would be in the semifinals and that we would have actually a home game. So we were never ready. Rizal wasn't there. I mean, hindi na katulad ngayon. There are a lot of venues to choose from.
Yeah.
Before it was just Panaad or Rizal, and both were in a sorry state.
Yeah.
I mean, knowing what I know now, it could actually have been played in a neutral venue. It would have been that should have been the case, but yeah, that's water under the bridge. And but if going back to your question, we would have had a big chance of going into this final, because even if we drew in the first leg, the pressure on the Indonesians would have been really, really, really bad.
Yes.
And we would have had the experience of playing them already.
Right.
Therefore, when we played them on the second leg, medyo even if our players could not hear each other very well, medyo nakabisado na rin nila yung game. So, yun ang
very astute description and by Boss Dan. No? I'm going to digress a bit. Your global team was promoted from Division 2 to Division 1. So hot on the heels of the 2010 Suzuki Cup, ayun na, sa UFL, talagang sumikat na lahat ng football. Your global team was like a national team. You had your stars, you had your homegrown players, even may mga player kang hindi kilala, pero grabe yung function. How do you feel about, kasi parang the point I'm trying to make is what Danding Coangco did for basketball, where he elevated it by getting naturalized players, by putting a team together for so long. He made everything competitive. I feel that Global's arrival in Division One elevated the competition. It pushed Kaya. It pushed everyone else. So the question, Boss Dan, is how did you feel around that time that, oh, hey, the Azkals are going up, then the UFL is going up, Global is there in Division One. In fact, nag-champion niya sa unang taon sa Division One. And ano thoughts mo around that time, Boss Dan?
No, syempre, sabi nga, hot on the heels of that victory, of that very good performance in Suzuki Cup. Uh, sa club level naman, uh, all I wanted to do was to form a club that will not have any issues on players going to the national team for call-ups. Kaya sa akin, I understand, of course, the dilemma of clubs. I mean, they want to win tournaments, uh, and sometimes the national team will have to be sacrificed, or vice versa. Uh, ako, I was some of the players I knew had that dilemma because, of course, right at that time, nag-uumpisa na yung maging strict yung clubs in terms of being able to release players. So in my mind, I was thinking, well, why don't I form a club that will have some of the Azkals players with us, so that anytime na kailangan ng national team, because at that time I felt that the team needed more time together,
Yes.
even outside the FIFA window breaks.
Yeah.
Medyo hindi pa ano yon. So, but the clubs uh, were very supportive, except that sometimes you'd really, I mean, there was really club versus country uh, tug of war starting already.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
but I understand the clubs, and that's why ang sa akin, sabi ko, I'll just form a club that will not give any that will not present any issue when call-ups are made for national teams. So that's the reason why some of the national team members were in global.
Right. Right. Boss, again, I'm going to go back to this. No, may success na sa national team. The UFL was highly picking up. There was this massive contract, 85. Um, at what point did you feel that you were starting to refine the plan, the master? I'm going to go back to that master plan, if there is indeed one. At what point did you craft it? Like, this is what we need to do? Because I remember you were saying then, we need to train abroad. We need to play meaningful games and meaningful tournaments to get us ready. So I know you were constantly refining things, but at what point did you feel na, okay, maybe this is the formula?
Yeah. When finally we got back from Vietnam,
Hmm.
uh, I felt that my point was clear in terms of giving it, giving it to PFF.
Hmm.
That if we have enough time to prepare,
Hmm.
we could actually gain success internationally.
Hmm.
And so, but when I presented that, I was ready to uh, concentrate on club football again and give the national team to PFF.
Hmm.
But at that time, circumstances intervened because there was a shift in leadership
Hmm.
sa PFF, and
Hmm.
therefore, when Nonong Araneta became president, uh, we felt na we didn't want to burden his presidency with uh, a national team that didn't have somebody managing it. So I continued to, and we actually agreed that I should continue to manage it muna because we were doing so well. Sayang naman kung hindi ma-sustain. So when that realization and when that agreement came, we then prepared for a longer term plan. That's why I had to, unfortunately, uh, not extend the contract of Simon
Mm.
McMenemy and had to get a coach with the proper licenses.
Mm.
And I had to fly to Germany to interview several coaches, including Coach Weiss, and I had to talk to DFB
Mm.
and get their recommendation, and they recommended Michael Weiss,
Mm.
and we were pretty successful
Yes.
in his period to bring in uh, the kind of leadership as a coach
Yeah.
for that period.
Right. Right. About 2011, we just have a few more questions. So 2011 was an incredible year. We started off with a bang at Panaad, the AFC qualifiers against Mongolia. Then we had the World Cup, the Asian qualifiers for the World Cup. Um, ang dami na nangyari. Then the UFL was just really becoming so massively popular. Football was just really off the roof. What are your thoughts about that crucial 2011 na umangat? Tapos in the next 2 years, ayan na sila Beckham and the LA Galaxy, Madrid, di ba? Ang dami na. So ano yung thoughts mo about 2011 elevating? Kung ano yung gains ng 2010, inangat pa niya?
Oh, no, I always felt, and that's why it reinforced my 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 point. Na if we prepare well, we will do well, and therefore I I concentrated on preparing well. So
Mm-hmm.
we went we went on a Southeast Asian tour. We played as many games as possible as a team para because at that time then yun nga nag World Cup qualifiers, our first Challenge Cup competitions and qualifiers as well, and medyo we were caught up in a lot of tournaments, and for me that was what was necessary
Yes.
to make us stronger, to get us to elevate us into a yeah, a more respected team and a stronger team. And yun ang kumbaga sunod-sunod na yung mga tournaments and activities, uh, all leading to uh, at that time kasi hindi pa rin ganun ka-calibrated yung approach ko eh. For
Mm.
me, it was just it was a it was a it was just inexperience. For me, going into the hundreds and going into the into higher ranking in FIFA was about playing as many games as you can as a team and getting those wins. And we were actually doing that,
Yes.
except that when I was looking at our results, yes, we were going up, but not as dramatically as I would want to until I realized that it's not really in the number of games, but in who you play with and who you win against. Kasi doon lang nagkakaroon ng spike sa rankings mo. But yeah, at that time it was a good experience for the team. The players enjoyed that time when we were able to travel. We had our camp in Germany. We
Yes.
had our camp in different parts of Southeast Asia, and that experience was I think will always be remembered by all of us.
Just a few more questions.
Mhm.
When that game in Panaad, February 2011, the stadium was packed. In fact, maraming tao hindi nakapasok sa Panaad. Did that reinforce in your mind that kung nagka-home game tayo against Indonesia, eto matitikman nila yung ganyan kaingay na crowd, ganyan ka sabik na crowd na to cheer the Philippine team on.
Oh yes. When we were in Indonesia, for example, sa hotel pa lang, ang daming tao ng, di ba? Ang daming mga Indonesians waiting for these Indonesian football stars to, sabi ko, kailan kaya ito may experience ng mga players na ng Pilipinas na hinihintay sila sa hotel, na ano. And lo and behold, it eventually happened. But yun yung iniisip ko, if when we played that first time, that was also my first time na nakapagpanaad for the team. I mean, the crowd was very enthusiastic, and I was overwhelmed by the reception in the hotel up to the stadium, and I could say, parang, oh, this is what the Indonesians felt during that time in Suzuki Cup, and you know, all that was quite an experience for the team, for the whole team, kasi kumbaga suddenly they were rock stars, and people recognized them, and people cheered, and people greeted them, and yes, if the question was, did it reinforce my, my feeling that we could have uh, won
Beat
against
Indonesia.
Indonesia? Certainly, uh, iba talaga.
Boss, that goal by Chiefy, that was a super goal. Nagtatalon-talon kayo sa pitch nung super goal ni Chief. How do you feel about that? You know, everything was clicking right there for the country and the team.
Actually, I always celebrate a goal ng enthusiastically na
And you punch your fist in the air. Okay.
pero I mean, I do that for every goal that we make, especially if it's a goal that gives us the lead, or it's a first goal, and so ano and to do that in front of your home crowd, and it was really, I mean, surreal.
Special?
Sorry.
Was it special too?
All these goals, pag ano, I really feel, I mean, I really got involved in the game. I mean, I was thrown out of the game in
Thailand?
Maldives.
Sa
No, in
Thailand?
Maldives.
Oh, Maldives.
In Maldives, I was thrown out. I mean, to be honest, at that time, it was very unfair. Hindi naman ako eh. Hindi ako yung nagsisigaw-sigaw, yung mga Spanish speaking coaches ko, yung goalkeeper coach and assistant coach. They were shouting and complaining to the referee. And while they were being given a warning, duman yung fourth referee, pinalakpakan ko siya eh. Parang, ako yung binigyan ng red card. Pinalabas ako. Tapos doon sa report, ang nilagay, I mean, sinabihan ko daw siya ng F word. Which I did not. I mean, how could you do that? I mean, I don't really, it's not in my regular language kasi. But especially at that time kasi hindi naman talaga.
Yeah.
Kasi I was fined $500 eh. And two game suspension eh. When I made an appeal sa FIFA disciplinary, or was it AFC?
AFC.
Hindi naman ako pinakinggan eh. Binigyan lang ako ng $1,000. Dinagdagan yung ano ko. Nagrereklamo ka ha. Eto, $1,000 and then 3 game suspension. Sabi ko, hindi na ako magrereklamo. Okay. Tiisin ko na lang. But yeah, that's how, I mean, I really got involved in the game, and every time we score, every time the opponent score against us, it also affects me. But
Boss,
it's part of it.
Boss Dan, these past 10 years have been incredible for Philippine football and for yourself, considered one of the godfathers of the rise of the sport. Para sa'yo, putting you on the spot, ano yung five best tournaments ng national team itong past decade? Para sa'yo, ano yung top? You don't need to rank this as number one, but ano yung
Uh,
five best mo?
uh, well, of course, our Suzuki Cup.
Yeah. Miracle in Hanoi.
Win. Actually, also the Suzuki Cup uh, semifinals. That first semifinals appearance sa Indonesia, because that was the first time that I experienced na uh, the a sea of red giving you the dirty finger, tapos sinalog-alog yung bus. Who could ever forget that? Uh, Several thousands of even children being taught by their parents how to do the dirty finger sa atin sa bus. Whew. But yeah, it became memorable for the whole experience.
Right.
Of course, our Asian Cup experience, because to be honest, that's even a bigger milestone than a semifinals appearance in Suzuki Cup.
Yeah.
Uh, because when you were there, you feel na kumbaga you're a few more steps for Philippine football and you'll be in the World Cup. I mean, but the atmosphere was almost the same. Ganun ang ano. So, our first game, parang tindig balahibo. The whole hosting was, I mean, it's like you're used to playing in a city meet, and then suddenly you're elevated into Southeast Asian Games or the Olympics. Parang ganun yung feeling eh. Because everything, the hosting, the the hotels and or how they treated you, and how everything was being yung mga yung mga things that happen outside the pitch and before the games, all those preparations, all those things, parang production, those are memorable things. And even if we didn't do really well, that was an experience na, ano, for me. And then there was one tournament that was also, uh, I think it was a Challenge Cup
Mm.
in Nepal,
Yeah.
when we placed third. That
Right.
was an experience for me. But yeah, I remember almost all of the games. I remember all my caps as a manager, and that was, uh, and you'll never forget that. And I'm very privileged to have been involved in this team.
Yes, sir.
A few years from now, somebody will take over, and I'm sure he will have a great experience. But uh, we've just started with what we've planned for the next few years. I think we'll we'll be seeing a new chapter for Philippine football where we're competing really with the best of Asia and with the best of the world.
Mm. Is there anything that you can be more specific with or wag muna?
Well, um, oh, medyo now with 10 years of experience
Mm.
under my belt,
Aha.
medyo mas ano ka na, mas focused na yung approach mo. I remember before, after 2010, when we were recruiting new players
Mm.
for the Azkals. We had this big game against UFL All Stars in UMAC. We had several tryouts, and ngayon, because really for every Phil Young husband na nag-a-apply, there are 50 others na foreign sounding yung names, for example, but are not as talented, maybe, if I may be more polite.
Mm.
uh, pero we had to go through that expensive experiment
Of
of
course.
bringing players in. Now mas focused and mas maayos na yung sistema ng team, such that we could actually we in on the management side, together with our new coach, Scott Cooper, we could see more or less how uh, on a kumbaga, on uh, player for player comparison, we could actually be competing against the best of Asia, and we would give them a really hard time.
Mhm.
So
What
it's
is
it's yeah. Yeah. For example, uh, because of what has happened over the past years, we have been able to attract players like Garrett Holtman,
mm,
who played for Mainz and is on loan to Paderborn, playing in the first division Bundesliga. We have Michael Kempter, who's coming in first division in Switzerland. We have Jesse Coran. We have, I mean, all these strong players. We have a young kid uh, who's already uh, playing for, well, who's already in the squad for first team of Leipzig. We have strong players that are coming in. The system is set up uh, even before the players come in. Alam na nila kung saan sila maglalaro, anong position, anong sistema. So with the limited time that we have together,
mm,
you don't need to spend a lot of time in just orienting them with how we are going to play and on the system. Medyo all that has been fine tuned, refined.
mhm.
Na I could say we've never been more ready. And
Mhm.
if we did, if it was historical in 2010, uh, we're ready to elevate that into a bigger level
Right.
this year next.
On that note, what is left on your bucket list as team manager, as football personality, the Godfather of football? What is left on your bucket list?
Uh, I think all of us have the same dream, uh,
World
playing
Cup.
for the World Cup.
Yeah.
And I thought before that it was something that I could never see in my lifetime or even in my stint as a manager.
Mm.
But more and more, I believe that we're in a position to
Yes.
really make a strong run for qualification.
Mhm.
Maybe uh, medyo naudot lang because of this
Pandemic. Yeah.
pandemic, but we have a strong team now, and at the very least, kumbaga, we should be a regular competitor in the Asian Cup already, just as we're a regular competitor in Suzuki Cup.
Right. Hindi ba, Boss Dan? I think FIFA is planning to expand the number of countries, especially from, I think, Asia, yung mga papasok.
Yes, there will be more slots,
Yeah.
but that's why it's giving me more hope. But even then, uh, if if we have the players that we know are coming, if they are able to process it on time,
Mm.
uh, we are quite in a strong position
Mm.
to make waves.
Mhm. Mhm. Anything else in your bucket list? Or you World Cup na lang
No,
muna?
just it's a World Cup, and the Filipino culture embracing football
Yeah.
to become a sport that they could actually support. like they support basketball, because I'm a basketball supporter as well.
Yes, yes, yes.
But
That's another
there
thing.
is really
And
there
volleyball
is
too. Volleyball then.
there is really no reason to be exclusive to one sport. I
Yes.
think you can enjoy playing football and basketball together, and then supporting both sports at the same time, or
Right.
any other sport. Pero for as long as football is on that list of uh, the favorite sports of Filipinos, then that's going to be a check on my bucket list.
Right. Right. Second to the last question. I know you are also a Liverpool fan. How do you feel about this championship?
Uh,
Although talo tayo kanina.
Oo nga eh. Pero that is actually the system that they're playing right now. That is actually the system that uh, tinitingnan ko yung the new Azkals setup. That's actually the kind of system na nakikita namin pwedeng laruin ng players natin. And
Wow.
we're quite excited. 3-4-3, and going into the system is quite. I try to learn from my coaches, all the coaches from Des Balpin to Simon didn't have much time, but I always listen to what he tells the players. With Thomas Dooley, I
Hmm.
always discuss with him, not because I want to influence him, but I want to learn from him. And the same thing with Scott Cooper, and it's very exciting when we talk about the future and how the system that he's planning to use. And I'm so excited, and we could spend a whole night just talking about who the who the upcoming players are, who's local based, who's
Right.
foreign based, and it's a whole night of football talk when we're together. Yes, so I'm quite excited.
I am excited too, and I'm sure so will a lot of other people. The last question. It is the 10th anniversary. Well, technically in a few more months, but we don't know if there'll be. I know that football back to practice, but nevertheless, it's the 10th anniversary. When you look back at it, ano yung thoughts mo about that? Aside from, obviously, we talked about the games. What is the legacy of 2010, Boston?
Well, it's for me, 2010 uh, is it's like a milestone in
Mm.
Philippine football.
Mm.
Not because, not just because of that victory against Vietnam, but it actually showed me the potential of football in the Philippines
Mm.
in terms of getting the support. Because after that, it's really just unfortunate that we had been unable to sustain the gains in terms of Filipino support. But I know we could tap into that again, and that we will have supporters again. So the significance of that of 2010 is having made the Filipinos aware that the national team can excel in football, and that it is a sport that they they could support and be proud of the national team, because they will have success. And I think going back to the bucket list, it's actually symbiotic, because if we go to imagine the Philippines going to the World Cup,
Yeah.
I
Wow.
think automatically uh, that support will come. Uh, and
Grabe, magkakagulo nun, boss. Kagulo yun.
Actually, I'm already claiming it. I'm already looking at it, and
I agree.
uh, I'm already I'm kumbaga I visualize it. I visualize that time when the when a game where it makes us qualify for the World Cup happens. So
Wow.
you know, I'm in that I'm in that zone right now, and we'll have to prepare for it.
Well, we will support you the rest of the way. So, boss, we
Thank you.
want to thank you
You've
for
always
your.
been there, Rick. So
Oh, no, no, no.
thank you very
You
much.
provided that vehicle. I am grateful for the opportunities you've given me. I'm so thankful for that, and I'm sure so is every other Filipino. Boss Dan, any final words to people watching? This is not live, but we will post it na lang on YouTube later on. Your any thoughts about people caught in this pandemic, frontliners, you know?
No, we are experiencing a difficult time right now. Businesses are closing. We have friends, relatives, and people we know getting sick. Uh, we It's not the best of times for the Philippines and for the world. But yes, uh, let's have that Azkals spirit. Even
Yes.
when we're down, we know that we're going up. And to all my kababayans, so everybody, it's really just at this point in time, there's nothing much to say except really keep safe and get ready for the Philippines when it gets up from this pandemic, because we're going to be like Azkals. We're resilient. We'll fight, and we'll get over this.
Words of wisdom from Dan the Man Palami. Boss, maraming salamat talaga
Thank
sa lahat
you.
ng
Thank
ginagawa
you.
mo. And
Thank
thank you
you.
for this opportunity to interview. As always, it's a pleasure interviewing you.
No,
Boss,
likewise.
boss, stay safe and
Thank
God
you.
bless you and your family and your ventures. I'll support you. God bless. Good night, boss.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good night. Good night.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Thank you.